All right, so we're joined from the banks of Lake Erie in Cleveland, Ohio, by my friend Bianca Crawford, founder of Motivated and Empowered. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School for our entrepreneurship class, and we're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County Schools, Madison Central High School, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, the Academic Option Center, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, obviously, we're going to talk about all the great things you're doing there in Ohio and motivated and empowered. Um, and I cannot wait to hear for them to hear about your different career paths that you've had because that's something me and you really have in common about pivoting through different fields. But I know something me and you talked a few weeks ago, and you really wanted to share your background. You are originally from Ohio, and I just think it's such a powerful statement to everything that you've been through. So just give us a little background, yeah, of all the things that you lived through before you were really an adult.
Absolutely. People always say, "Are you ashamed of your story?" I say no, because I feel like it made me this amazing leader, and force to be reckoned with. And so my mom had me at 15, and it was, a statistic and a number from the beginning. And so my first memory of being homeless is I was 5 when I first remember just losing everything. I was molested at 6, 7, and 8. I was raped at 13 and 14. By the time I got to high school, I had already been on 18 schools, but I graduated a year early from high school. Um, at 15, I was interning on a domestic violence and a capital murder case here in Ohio, but was being abused at home and was running away. And so I actually got charged with multiple unruly charges and was sentenced to 7 years in DYS, which is like the youth penitentiary for kids. I was able to escape that. I reached out to my judge and said, "Hey, look, this is what's going on at home. I need for you to help me get out of this. This is what I want to be. My grades are this. I'm a straight A student. I've been in honor classes since I was in the sixth grade, taking eighth grade classes. I need for you to give me another out." And so he began the emancipation process. I graduated a year early, got accepted into 42 colleges and universities.
Wow.
But my emancipation process was not completed. And so I end up having to have my mom sign off on the schools, and she refused to sign off on every school that I wanted to go to, except for Kent State. And so I went to Kent, but I went without scholarships. I went without anything. I took out a credit card to pay for school. I ended up falling in love in a domestic violence relationship, lost everything that I worked for. And the next day I met my husband, and that changed my life. He moved me to Nashville, and that began the path to me healing and doing what I do now.
That's incredible. And I know that's the condensed version, but it's just so amazing. And I guess, and you know, what I really want people to get from that is it doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't matter where you go. It matters where you end up. And everybody is going
Absolutely.
to face obstacles no matter who you are, especially these black kids are going to face so many things, but how you respond to that, how you overcome that really makes you the person you are. So even if you never become an entrepreneur, of any sort, that same concept can just take you so far in life. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, you said you went to Kent State, and then you were also, and then you wound up in Nashville. Now, you worked in several fields. You were in retail, you were a corrections officer, you did a lot of things before you started Motivated and Empowered. So just take us through that winding road because look, if anybody can relate to that, it's me. I did not become a teacher until I was 30 years old. So I want to hear a little bit about this because I think this is another it's another good thing to hear because it's never too late to change trajectories.
Yeah, absolutely. And so when I started working at 14 because that was just what I had to do. I was a part of this workforce development program they had in Ohio called YOU. And so my first job was actually at a hospital, and I worked in the HR department at 14. And I left when that program was over. I worked at McDonald's like everyone does. And then I went and worked at Applebee's. And when my husband and I met, I was actually working at a church. I've always been in ministry. And so when he took me to Nashville, I didn't know what to do. I had just finished school, and I actually had crossed the stage and realized I failed one of my classes, so I didn't have my degree. And so I started at a temp agency that put me at a correction facility in HR because that's what I had did already. And so I'm working in HR, and but it was through a temp agency, so the position fell apart. And so I'm actually sitting in the store, and this guy walks in. He's like, "Yeah, I own all these T-Mobiles across, Nashville and Huntsville, Alabama, and blah blah blah." And he's like, you can come work here. And so I was like, sure. I applied for this job. I never heard back from him. And so at the time, we were still going through a hard time, me and my husband. So I had to get a job that I could walk to that was close to my house. And so I went and worked at Buffalo Wild Wings. And next door to Buffalo Wild Wings was a T-Mobile. And so I went in and I applied for this job. And Lord behold, it's this guy that I had met that said he owned all the T-Mobiles. He owned this one. And so the lady that worked there, she was really dope, really down to earth. We actually became really best friends. She hired me and she trained me under her. She had been with him for like 14 years. He paid well, great commission. And so he allowed me to learn. And then next thing I knew, I was training all across the region for him.
Wow.
And making amazing money, more money than I ever had made in my life. And then at that time, I decided that I still wanted to focus on my path. My degree was in criminal justice and corrections. And so I knew that I wanted to go back into that field. And so I applied for a prison. And so as I was working there, the prison said, yeah, we can hire you, but you got to go through the academy. So, but the academy's during the day. And so I'm like, I can't let my job go. I need to do both. And so I switched my schedule up. I did both. I went to the academy, still worked my retail job. Then I got hired on and they said, oh, well, you have to work 12-hour shifts from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And I said, well, that works perfectly, right? Because I can still keep my other job in retail. I can work during the day. I can work here at night. I don't have kids. It's just my husband. He's in school too. And so I did that for a whole year. And I worked in the prison and I worked retail and eventually got a lot for me. But I really honed in and I realized that I had a heart to serve. And so I worked in the men's penitentiary and I was able to go really fast up the ranks. And so I went from just a CO to being actually a gang unit leader, lieutenant. And so I ran the gang unit. And then I went from there to segregation. And I left segregation and I went to med ops. And I left med ops and I actually then went over to the chaplain's office. And so my husband is the pastor. And at that time, I hadn't really started doing work in the church, but I knew I loved it because I served my husband. And so I went over to the chaplain's office, and then I ended up going back into corrections, and I ended up getting pregnant. And so my husband was like, "Oh, it's time for you to come out the jail." And I was like, "I don't know what I'm going to do." And so when we had our son, and he was like, "It's time to go back home," because all of our family was in Cleveland. I came back home and I applied for a federal government position, and I was hired. And so I worked for the federal government for years. And it's just like military. You give the federal government 8 years, they'll take care of you for the rest of your life. And so I was committed to DOD and I worked in the Department of Defense and I was able to work in military pay and then I moved from military pay to what they call presidential pay. And so that's where you pay the presidents and their wives and all those great things. And so I was able to do that. But my heart at 19 had wrote my mission for this nonprofit. And I knew that ultimately that's where I wanted to be. And so I looked at my husband and I said, it's time for me to do my work. And I left my federal job without benefits. I was at year 6.5 and I
Oh,
left
wow.
without getting full benefits. And I started my nonprofit fully. And it has been a joy. We service 2,500 youth a year. We have 5 locations. And so we service the Nashville area, the Cleveland area, Dallas, Texas, Atlanta, Georgia. Right now, we are building a housing facility for 150 kids aging out of foster care or respite housing for kids who just need a break from their house. We have a workforce development with some of the largest partners and banks and entertainment companies in Cleveland,
Wow.
where we're able to give our parents and our youth jobs. And on the other side of that, I have a consulting firm. And so my consulting firm is nonprofits. I help them start and I help them get money. I'm a grant writer. I've won 6.5 million to date in the last 2 years for my clients. And this year alone, I hit my first time being the first millionaire in my family.
Wow. And obviously, I want to talk about motivated and empowered because the work you're doing is just incredible. And it's incredible how humble you are of all the great things you've done. Because I used to live in the Nashville area. I'm familiar with Pearl Cohn High School and McGavick High School as well. But we'll get to that. You hit on something that I think is important because you talked about some of the jobs that you had before you were an entrepreneur. Because you talked about working in restaurants, you talked about working in face-to-face retail sales, you talked about working in corrections. One thing that all three of those jobs have in common is you have to be able to communicate. And obviously in different aspects, But the face-to-face communication, the face-to-face sales, the human interaction, and all three of those jobs is what makes somebody good at it. Now, these
Yeah.
kids want to get so mad at me when I have them present, when I have them speak, but what they don't realize, it's not to be mean, it's not to make them nervous. If you can master that, it is amazing how many other things you can be successful at when it comes to being able to sell and being able to communicate.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. The most influential class for me in high school was my speech class. And so my teacher, his name was Mr. Corduba. I'll never forget him. He was a former professor at Ohio State, and literally we were being prepared for public speaking. And we had to write these speeches. We had to get up, whether it was 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and I mean, he was oh my god, he was so critical. He would throw a plastic apple at us every time we messed up, and I hated him at first. I was like, oh, I can't stand this man. Um, but it prepared me to be able to do some of the most amazing things. I tell people I can talk to the man on the corner, and I've been able to sit in the White House and have a conversation with the president. And it's because I know one how it's called code switching. I know how to come down and I know how to go up. And if it wasn't for him putting me in uncomfortable positions to be able to do so, I wouldn't be able to because I'm just a girl from the hood, right? So every now and again, the hood comes out. And so every now and again, I have to be, okay, wait, let me get it together. And so it was because he allowed me to be able to learn how to maneuver through those things. And he would like we had to write our speeches and it would be red marks all over my stuff. And but at the end I was in AP English. I like I said, and so it prepared me to be talking is the game. People don't buy, people don't support, people don't give to organizations, people don't hire if you don't have a good game in talking. And so it changed my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's all about selling yourself, selling a product, selling an idea. And even if you don't want to be an entrepreneur, that's what makes the best employees. Or,
Yeah.
as both of us worked in cellular phone sales, the best people weren't the ones that had the most degrees. The best people were the ones that could talk. So
Yeah.
it really is a skill that can make you a lot of money, whether you go to college or not. Now, obviously, I want
Yeah.
to talk about motivated and empowered because it is amazing all the things you do. And we'll point everybody to the website before we're done. And you mentioned a few things that you've done. And even though your heart is for young girls, your message could really apply to anyone because
Yes.
because you've really gotten involved in the inner cities with young kids that are exposed to high crime, exposed to drugs, exposed to gang activity, and really show them that there's a better way. And look, this may be controversial saying this, but I say it all the time. We're losing too many good, intelligent kids to gang violence in our cities. We have kids in Jackson that are dying in the streets that it could have been avoided if somebody had taken the time to show them there was a difference. And if they had listened, sometimes, you know, sometimes if they had listened and seen that there's a better way, you do not have to be a product of your environment. And that is what your
Absolutely.
organization has done such a great job of. So just talk about the some of the groups that you've worked with and some of the things that you do and how you've not, obviously this is a passion, but you've turned it into a business.
Absolutely. So every part of what we do is based off of my life. Um, and so when people are like, how do you do it all? It's because I wish I had someone in those places. And so one of the things that we do is mentorship, right? And so some of the key people in my life were mentors. That when I didn't have somebody at home to talk to, I had some great mentors at school, at church, in the community that really pushed me past what I was dealing with. When I tell you my life is a movie, like when I play it back, I feel like I'm sitting in Antoine Fisher type stuff, right? And so I'm like, it was if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have been able to maneuver through it. And so we have a mentor piece component. We also have a violence intervention and gang violence. I was heavily involved in gang activity. And I was a fighter. And so even growing up, my dad was like, let me put you in boxing because maybe it'll stop you from fighting so much. And that didn't work. It just made me even more arrogant. Like, now I really know I can knock you out, right? And so it was to the point like he's like, okay, it's time for us to license your hands. And I was like, I'm not licensing my hands. So at that point, I just stopped boxing because I'm like, if you're gonna make me license my hands, that means I can't fight. And I'm not, so and so but I realized that it wasn't that I had to fight all the time. There were some times I could have just walked away. And so there were some times that I could have just talked some stuff out. versus putting my hands on people. And so we do have a violence intervention program, gang intervention. And I tell all the people all the time, like when we think about gang violence, are we thinking about just street code? It's really about who can protect us and keep us in that moment. And so we're not looking at it like, oh, it's something bad. We're looking at it like, I need somebody that can help me get my food, to get my money up, that's gonna protect me. You know what I mean? And so, and belonging. And a lot of times the family dynamic is destroyed and they don't have that, and so they're searching for it from all different angles. And the right person say the right thing at the right time when you're going through the wrong thing, and it just introduces you into a world that you really don't want to be a part of. We also focus on working with teen moms. There's a high rise in African American girls being pregnant at a young age. A lot of it's due to human trafficking and sex trafficking. Part of it is just due to, I mean, the reality is not having our fathers in our lives to remind us of how precious and how amazing we are and what our gift is. And so we're seeing a really high increase of teen moms. And so we're really working with them, still teaching them how to advocate for themselves, find their voice, being able to keep their kids, because a lot of times they end up in the custody of the other state as well as the kid. And so it just begins this downward cycle. And so we really work with them on that. And then success, college success and entrepreneurship. And so every college is not for everybody, right? And so whether it's going to, like my daughter, she's like, Ma, I don't want to be, I don't want to go to college. I want to own a hair salon and I want to make millions of dollars, and people do it. And so I've been feeding that passion. And then I have one of my girls who I adopted. I adopted her at 12. Her mom died of an overdose, and I've had her since. And she's a nurse. And when I got her, she was in a gang and she was in juvenile. And so just really understanding like everybody's path is different. And so we work with them. We give scholarships every year. And then, like I said, our housing initiative right now, housing crisis is high. And, especially once you're in juvenile or, mom put you out, you don't have, a lot of my kids are couch surfing and so giving them that space, like, it's not even like a shelter. Like it's a dorm style apartment. You come in and you feel like you at college, and we make sure we wrap around you and then we integrate you back, whether it's through jobs, whether it's through reunifying the family. And so I've just been honored to be able to do the things that we've done. I've seen some of the worst. I've seen children being abused sexually. I've seen physical abuse. I've seen drug addictions. I've seen some of my kids addicted to vapes and selling themselves just to buy a vape pen, right? And so I've been able to see it all, and I'm thankful that I'm that person that no matter how bad it is, my kids walk to me like, "Man, Miss Crawford, you're gonna be mad, but this is what I did," and I'm honored to be able to be that person. Now, also, they know I'm coming, and so we service 5 states. But if any of my kids call me, Miss Crawford is getting on the plane and she's coming, and so I think that would make it different because they know if they call, I'm coming.
Yeah, and I know when me and you talked a few weeks ago, you said you're looking into getting something started in Mississippi, and I know there's definitely
Yeah.
a need for it. But one thing you do, and I know me and you agree on this, is because one thing I was interviewed by a magazine last year, and I said that one of the biggest problems is the lack of exposure and the lack of resources. Because you will never hear me say otherwise that for decades, especially rural black communities, but rural communities in general, were left behind when it comes to exposure and access to so many things. And it really is seeing what's possible, because a lot of the people that fall into the cycle of gang violence, that's all they've ever known. That's all they've ever seen. They have not seen anybody that looks like them or anybody in their family do anything that could lead them out of their situation. So people like you and me bringing in people to speak and showing what is possible for anybody, no matter where you come from, is just so important, because that is such a key thing when it comes to keeping kids from falling into that cycle.
Absolutely. And I tell my kids all the time, don't be ashamed that you fail. Like that's the part that makes you uh right now there is a thing they're doing at the state and federal level, and it's called experience um experience commission work. And so they're bringing people who have made mistakes into the prisons, into juvenile to talk, and they're paying you to do it. Literally just based off of your life experience. Like, look, I'm willing to come tell my story. And a lot of times we're ashamed to say I failed, my life wasn't great, my parents wasn't great. We don't want to shame our parents. We don't want to, let them down or, put dirt on our family name. But don't be ashamed of your story. Like, And it's okay to fail. It's not going to be perfect. Anybody tell you that the life is perfect and it's easy, they lie. Right. And I tell my kids that from day one, it's not easy. It doesn't get easier being an adult. It gets worse because now you add bills and all the other responsibility to what you have to do. And so, just remember that in those moments that you feel like people have forgotten about you, that's even more reason for you to go 10 times harder. And so it was moments when I laid in my bed and was like, I want to be out of here. I'm done. I'm a 7-time suicide survivor. I've tried to take my life 7 times. And it was not until the very last time I was out of here. They pumping my stomach and I'm fighting. Like, don't save me. Let me go. Life is too hard. And it was the officer. My mom didn't come to the hospital. It was the police officer who worked my neighborhood, came to the hospital, and they was pumping my stomach. Her words to me is, you have purpose and it starts here. Don't give up. That day was the day I decided that everything that I wanted, I was going to get. And if I had to work 10 times harder to get it, I wasn't. I walked into rooms with my counterparts as men, as white men, white women, white men. And sometimes they're looking at me like, how are you qualified? And I have to remind them, first of all, I have 4 degrees now. I've
Wow.
worked for the federal government. I've run 2 6-figure companies. And so I'm just as qualified to sit at this table, probably even more qualified than you are. So please don't pass me by. And if you do, I'm coming back 10 times harder. I'm going to come for your job this time.
Wow. Now, before I get to their questions, and I've got some really good ones, something that I think, and I haven't had to have this, I haven't gotten a chance to have this conversation, and I need to have it real quick, because obviously you have spent time working in a men's penitentiary, and obviously rap music. When I was a kid, I was into rap music too. I'm not even gonna lie, I loved it in the '90s. I think we all did. But the glorification of criminal lifestyle, being a convict, really doesn't paint the reality of the plight of young men that are incarcerated. So, as somebody that has worked full time in a prison with young men that had a lot to live for at some point, is there anything cool or fun about being locked up when you have lost your freedom at a young age?
Absolutely not. And so, I used to tell people all the time, like, they all for it on the outside, but when they get in, they are the most crybaby, I need my mommy, somebody save me, man. I'll be like, let me record this so I can send it out to your friends because you sitting here in the middle of the floor pouting. I mean, I had a 19-year-old, like, full-fledged temper tantrum, like literally in the middle. I want my mom. I'm like, dude, you just murdered somebody. You wasn't calling for your mom when you was there. But the reality is that when you go behind them prison doors, everything is meant to destroy you from that moment. The way you have to wash up, the way you have to be examined, the way you're strip searched, the way I'm gonna come in your room and I'm gonna tear your room apart. Everything about your manhood or your womanhood, because I work with women, we had a women's pod as well. I'm going to destroy it. And so there are some people who thrive off of that. And so when you go in there, it's mental. You're never mentally going to be the same. The way those doors close, the way you're locked in there, the way you have to wash your clothes in your toilet. Like, they don't tell you that. Like, you gonna wash your clothes by putting it in that toilet that you gonna put your urine in, right? The food, not the best at all. The rats, the roaches, not the best whatsoever. And so, when I was there, I had one of the cleanest pods. I did not have incidents for 3 years on my unit. And my warden would come in like, Crawford, why? And I would tell him, I said, because I got one rule and one rule only. I'm going to treat you like a man in here until you show me otherwise. After that, I'm going to treat you like the inmate you are. And my pen holds weight. I can add more time or I can take it away. We're going to figure this out. And so I've watched 19-year-old guys facing 40-year sentence, and their time just keep getting added because they're doing stupid stuff. And it's like they didn't even learn. But then I've also watched 19-year-olds come in there and kill themselves because mentally it's too much. Christmas Day was my first suicide in a prison. I was 6 months pregnant, and one of my inmates jumped from the top floor, and I'm trying to hold him up with everything in me, but I'm pregnant, and I'm calling the code, and he like 300 pounds, and I'm trying to hold him up, but I couldn't. I had to let him go. And so I had to watch him fall on this concrete floor and brains go everywhere. And I'm just devastated because I had just walked in my unit and he had so much potential, but he made a bad decision. His girlfriend on the outside got murdered in a car accident and she was pregnant with their twins. And it was just too much for him and he took his life.
Wow. And also another conversation we need to have another time is the fact that this issue of mental health awareness and suicide awareness in the Black community cannot be overstated. The stigma is ending, and it really is something that needs to be talked about. But we don't have time today, but we definitely need to have that at some point. Now, I do have some questions from the students, and I have all young men in here with me today, and they're asking some really good questions. I did not coach these at all. This first one is
Okay.
Cameron Sutton. He's in 10th grade. And he asked if your mother had signed off on the college that you wanted to go to, what was your first choice?
I was accepted to Harvard on the full ride, so it went.
Wow. Wow. I can barely spell Harvard, so that's impressive. All right, this is a deep question here. I like this. This is Christopher Mitchell. He's one of our basketball players here. And he asked, after everything you dealt with, would you say that it was worth it?
Yes, I'm able to walk in rooms and say this is how I made it out versus how I heard that I made it out. It gives me a type of authority most people don't have.
Unbelievable. This is Edward Flowers. He's a member of our band here, and he's got an interesting question. It's actually two parts. He asked, throughout your childhood hardships, was there ever a time you had significant doubts that you would not be able to overcome them?
Yes, and I think my first time thinking that was when I was 7. My mom put me out in a snowstorm with no shoes, no coat, no nothing, and I walked about 12 miles to my grandmother's house in that weather. And at one point, I did step out in front of a car, like, just take me now. And so there were a lot of times that I thought that I wasn't going to make it. Um, but it was my faith, honestly, that kept me through. Like, I was loving Jesus at 10. Like, Lord, if it ain't for you, like, and so, yeah, it was a lot of times I thought I wasn't going to make it.
Unbelievable. Now his second question is more business related because he has an idea for an app startup, and he asked, "What would be the biggest tip you would give me on connecting with consumers?"
LinkedIn. It's a powerful tool. People don't think about it. And so LinkedIn can change your world. I've had some of the greatest partnerships through LinkedIn.
Yeah,
And you're
and
not too young to
and
get LinkedIn.
oh, I agree. I agree 100%. It is you're not getting and not near as much spam, way more secure. So just really a great way to network, great way to put your resume out as well, um, or to promote your own business. This is Tadavian Smith. He's also a member of our band. He also has a great idea for a tech startup, and he asked, "What would be the best, or what would be the way that your worth of your company would increase in the next 5 years?"
So for my for-profit would probably be the best way to think about it. And so it's going to be systems and AI. And so really generating that. And so even as a grant writer, I'm more so teaching people how to use AI in grant writing. And so and how to do that. So I think like really understanding the world where tech is going to change the value of our company.
Absolutely. And I think AI and tech, that's a whole nother class. I had an AI person last block, but
Yeah.
that really is touching every field. So for people that,
Yes.
again, you said college isn't for everybody. People that want to get tech certified, we have several here that are in our IT program. You get tech certified, these companies will have a place for you, and you'll be able to start at least a side hustle company. That is definitely the future of business, and it needs more good
Absolutely.
professionals as well. I like this one. This is Shavaka Page, also in 10th grade, and he asked, when you talk about the speaking class helping you, did you realize it would help you so much in the future when you were in the class?
I did not. I like I told you, I hated that man. And so in the class, I will say I didn't understand how much it would help me, but I did appreciate the strict behavior he gave me. It gave me discipline that I didn't have in my other classes because I was really smart. I can breeze through my work. And so I never had to work really hard. But his class made me work. And so it taught me things that I probably wouldn't have learned if I didn't take his class.
Yeah, and that's what, I cannot tell you how many kids, and this isn't because of me, it's just because of reality. I cannot tell you how many kids have come back to me and said, "Man, I wish I'd have listened when you told me that." And I'm like, it's not something I was just telling you what was going to happen. It wasn't something I came up with on my own. I
Right.
got time for one more. This is Herbert Carmichael. Also, he's another one of our tech guys. Really has an idea for a good tech startup, and he asked, "What made you see that this business and service was so needed in the community?"
Well, if you look at the numbers, African American boys and girls is the highest amongst those who are undereducated and underserved and disengaged when it comes to jobs in school. And so just that alone, if you're disengaged in school and in the job, I mean, what else are you doing with your life? So that really opened up the question to say, well, where else are you spending your time? And so we then start looking at incarceration, and that was going up, and they was dropping the ages of bindovers where you can get charged as an adult. And then we start looking at the homeless rate and the children's service rate, and that was going up. How many kids was being pulled out of the homes? And so that really let us know, like, this population, African American kids and Hispanic kids, are being left out and treated differently, and they don't have opportunities that we have. And so my job is to create you the opportunities. I'm gonna walk you into some rooms that you probably wouldn't able to get in, and I'm gonna use my name to do it. And so that's kind of how I started getting into it. And I use my personal life. I really knew that if I had some certain things, I wouldn't have went through some of the things I did.
That's incredible. Well, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. I'm just blown away at your story. But a couple of things before we go. First of all, motivatedandempowered.com, and it's different the way you spell it. So it is motivatedandempowered.com.
Yes.
Yeah, and all of your social medias are on there. All the great things. You got a great picture gallery on there of all the kids you've worked with, and a lot of history of the things you guys have done. It's just such an incredible story. But it's like I said, and it's no coincidence that we're still celebrating Black History Month here in the United States. And like I said, right now with me, I have all young men, and it's just the amount of talent in this room, the amount of intelligence in this room, the amount of potential in this room, and throughout our community is unbelievable. Now, I agree. Everybody is not meant to be a college graduate, but everybody is meant to be successful. So why do we
Absolutely.
need? And I know your group deals. You're mainly dealing with young girls, but like I said, your message can apply to everyone. So why are we
Yes.
in such desperate need for more successful Black men in our communities?
Well, first of all, we actually do it, boys. So we have our boys program. It's called Me Too.
Okay,
And
cool.
so we have a whole boys side, and my husband runs that side of the
Oh,
program.
awesome.
But what we have to realize is that the Black man is the person who creates the culture for us. They are the staple of the community, and they were designed by nature to be the strength of our community. And so if we continue to strip them down, then you'll see the continued breakdown in our community because we don't have the strength of the man to lead us.
Absolutely, man. I tell you, if you can't get inspired by your story, I don't know what else I can do for you. Just such great work you're doing. I really hope you can get some type of footprint in Mississippi, and I'd be more than happy to assist you with that in the future. But we just thank you so much for joining us all the way from Cleveland, Ohio. Bianca Crawford, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, talk to you soon, buddy.
Okay, bye.